Ingrid Bergman was famous for being pure, smart, and beautiful in a way that never got old. But behind those bright blue eyes that made the whole world fall in love with her, there was a secret so big it could have shocked all of Hollywood. Many years after Bergman died, someone found a private letter she had written, and it totally changed how people saw this famous movie star. The letter told everything. It talked about the first time she met the man who was a big star at Centuries Fox, their secret romance while she was married to someone else at the fancy Hotel Bear, the scary mystery photos that showed up at her house, and the sad moment when she had to end it all. Who was this man? And what made him so special that Ingrid Bergman said with her last words, "I still think of you"? In the middle of the 1940s, when Hollywood was coming back to life after the war, Ingrid Bergman was at a really important point in her career. After making the movie Gaslight, she had become the queen of movies. And right then, a mysterious job offer came her way. Alfred Hitchcock, the famous director who made scary and suspenseful movies, wanted her to be in a mind-bending drama that nobody in the movie business had ever seen before. The movie was called Spellbound, and it was being made by the tough producer David O. Selznick. The film had a really bold idea: to show Freudian psychology, which is all about dreams and the mind, in a movie. This was a really brave, even crazy idea for that time. But when the script arrived at her door, Bergman said no right away. "This story doesn't make any sense," she said very directly. "I can't believe in a love that comes from dreams and someone losing their memory." Selznick got really mad, but Hitchcock didn't say anything. A few days later, Hitchcock came to visit her himself, but she still said firmly, "No means no." He didn't try to argue with her. He just smiled, and his eyes looked like he knew something funny. "You'll come back," he said. "I bet you'll change your mind after you meet him." One afternoon in 1944, Ingrid Bergman came to the movie studio without really wanting to be there. She was going to meet the man who might act with her in the movie. She had already decided she didn't like the project. This visit was just a good excuse to say no for the second and last time. Then the door opened. Gregory Peck walked in. He didn't talk much, just looked at her and smiled. "Good afternoon, Miss Sweden," he said. He was taller than she thought he would be, with wide shoulders and calm, smart blue eyes that seemed like they could see right into her soul. In that second, Bergman felt her heart skip a beat. Every sound in the room seemed to disappear. She couldn't hear the director's voice or papers moving around. Only the look from this man who had just walked into her life. It was like two totally different worlds suddenly crashed into each other. From far away, Selznick watched them carefully. "You two can read a scene together," he said. Peck started speaking, his voice deep and steady. "I don't know who I am, but I know that I love you." A weird electric feeling, delicate but exciting, ran down Bergman's back. She couldn't look away. She looked down, pretending to fix the script pages to hide her shaking hands. The next morning, she called Hitchcock on the phone. "I'll do it," she said simply. Bergman didn't need a fancy psychologist to explain why she changed her mind. She was following her gut feeling, nothing more. From the moment she saw Peck say those lines, she had found her real reason to say yes: Gregory Peck himself. From the very first days when they started filming Spellbound, there was a special tension between them that they couldn't really talk about. Hitchcock was the first person to see it. He quietly watched them through the camera, sometimes clearing his throat or pretending to sneeze, a clumsy way to break up the charged feelings surrounding the two actors. Then one particular scene came up. Hitchcock told Peck, "Hold her hand until she believes you're not the patient." When the camera started rolling, Peck reached out his hand. And right then, something inside Bergman broke. His hand was warm and steady, but she could feel a tiny shake underneath. Their eyes met and they both started to shiver. Hitchcock finally yelled, "Cut!" But neither of them moved. They just stared at each other in thick, wordless silence. That night, in her private letter, Bergman wrote just one line: "My God, I've gone mad." During the filming of Spellbound in 1945, Ingrid Bergman had to live with a really hard inner struggle between what was on the movie screen and what was real life. In every scene she had to look deeply into Gregory Peck's eyes for hours and hours. But she knew the line she couldn't cross way too well. "I can't touch him," she thought, because at that time Ingrid Bergman was already a married woman. She was married to Dr. Peter Lindstrom, a Swedish brain surgeon who had come with her to America when her career was just starting. They had a daughter together named Pia, and from the outside they looked like the perfect family. But behind Hollywood's sparkle and shine, their marriage had been cold for a long time. Peter was practical and logical, while Ingrid became more and more distant, pulled into the exciting glow of acting. Every morning on the movie set she reminded herself, "This is just work. I have a family." But it was the close scenes with Peck, the touches, the hugs, that started to drive her crazy. One afternoon while filming a scene at the hospital where Peck's character falls into her arms, director Hitchcock whispered, "Hold him a little longer, Ingrid. Let the feeling find its way out." She did what he said. In that moment, when Peck lifted his head, the look in his eyes wasn't acting anymore. Everything became so real that Bergman had to turn her face away. But Peck held her hand tightly, refusing to let go, a magnetic pull without any words. That evening, Bergman went back home. The house felt colder than it ever had before, and her love for her husband had died a long time ago. Standing quietly by the window, she said softly, "God, I've made a terrible mistake." The rain that afternoon seemed like it was written just for their moment. Heavy drops poured down from the roof. Ingrid Bergman stood there, quickly threw on a wool coat, and was about to leave when suddenly a man blocked her way. He wasn't holding an umbrella. His hair was soaking wet, standing there like a lost beam of light in the storm, proud but also broken. Her heart squeezed tight. Before her brain could stop her, she stepped out from under the roof, facing the rain. The pouring rain drowned out all other sounds. "What are you doing?" she shouted. Gregory Peck turned around. His eyes were full of mixed feelings, burning desire mixed with pain. "I can't pretend anymore," he said, his voice almost a whisper. But she heard it clearly. She froze. The world seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them in the heavy rain. Peck moved closer, one step, then another, slow and sure. When he stopped right in front of her, Bergman could feel his breath mixing with the cold rain. "Gregory," she whispered, trembling, "don't say another word." But Peck didn't stop. He touched her face, a gentle touch that sent a shiver through her whole body. And then he kissed her. The kiss wasn't soft and tender. It burst out like a fire that had been held back for way too long. Rain ran down their faces, mixing with fear and desire that had been hidden for so long. Peck's hands gripped her shoulders tightly, and Bergman could only give in. She kissed him back without thinking. When they finally pulled apart, the rain hadn't stopped. Neither of them spoke. Only the sound of their heavy breathing filled the thick air. Peck looked at her with painful longing. "I know you have a husband," he whispered. "But God, I can't hold it in anymore." Bergman closed her eyes. She trembled, her voice breaking. "Gregory, let us be only the characters in this film." Their love affair began there, a forbidden secret neither of them could resist. Gregory Peck was the one who made the first move. He could sense Bergman's inner storm, torn between the perfect family that the world admired and the fire burning inside her heart. One night after they finished filming late, he sent her a small note through an assistant. It had only 3 important words: "Hotel Bear, 11 p.m. Ingrid stared at the note, her hand shaking. She knew that if she went, there would be no going back. But when the clock showed 10:50, she left home in a black coat, her face hidden under a wide hat. When she got there, Peck was waiting in a dimly lit room on the 3rd floor, with rain tapping against the window. He held a bunch of white lilies. The flower she once said was, "the only thing that makes me believe in gentleness." As she walked in, he didn't say anything, just handed her the flowers. his hand shaking a little bit. "You're afraid people will see us," she said. Peck replied, his voice steady. "I'm more afraid of not seeing you." They sat across from each other talking about everything. The film, how lonely they felt, the fear of living a life built on pretending. She told him about her husband who couldn't understand why she stayed awake all night after every day of shooting. Peck listened without judging her, only understanding. Then silence came. He stood up, stepped closer, and gently put his hand on her cheek. "I've tried to forget you," he said. Ingrid closed her eyes. In that instant, everything she had pushed down for months, guilt, fear, desire, burst free. When she left the hotel, she held the bunch of lilies hidden inside her coat. The next day, in front of Hitchcock's camera, nobody noticed anything unusual. But when Peck looked at her during the scene, their eyes didn't belong to their characters anymore. And from that day on, white lilies showed up every morning, each with a single note. Last night, still the scent of you. The love between Ingrid Bergman and Gregory Peck burst out like a blazing fire. Fierce, beautiful, but meant never to last. Their secret meetings in hotel rooms became a safe place for two people who had to hold back their feelings. Each time the door closed, the world outside disappeared. They were no longer movie stars, no longer public icons, only two human beings searching for warmth in their loneliness. Peck loved her the way a young man does, passionately, honestly, and willing to risk everything. He wrote her short letters, often just a few scribbled lines. "Every time I leave you, I feel hollow, as if I've lost the sun." As for Ingrid, with the heart of a married woman, she felt both incredibly happy and terrified. Each time Peck held her hand, she felt alive, but also like she was betraying everything she had built. Her life, her name, her duty. Every time she went back home, Ingrid felt like she was stepping into a cold, strange world. Peter Lindstrom, the husband she once believed would be her safe place, now seemed like a stranger. He still read the newspaper every night, sometimes looking up to smile when she walked in. It was a calm smile, but something about it made her uncomfortable. She always avoided looking into his eyes, afraid he might see the conflict inside her. But it was exactly that quiet smile that started to scare her. One evening he casually asked, "Gregory Peck, is he easy to work with?" After that, she couldn't sleep. Each time Lindstrom touched her shoulder, she saw Peck's face flash before her eyes. And then the guilt came rushing in, so strong that she would sit up in the middle of the night watching her husband sleep, as tears quietly ran down her face. Then one bright day, everything fell apart. When she came home from filming, she found a big envelope tied with red string on the table. There was no name saying who sent it. She opened it and dozens of photographs fell onto the floor. She recognized them right away. They were pictures of her and Gregory Peck in a small cafe near Beverly Hills, inside a car parked under a dim street light, in the hallway of the hotel where they thought nobody knew about them. Ingrid froze. Her shaking hands grabbed the edge of the table. She stared at the words written across one of the photos. "Hollywood always has eyes." Her mind screamed, "Who? Who did this? What do they want? To destroy my name?" She waited. She knew an anonymous threat like this would surely lead to something else. She checked the phone all the time, checked the mailbox, looked at every tabloid headline, waiting for the explosive story, waiting for the blackmail phone call. But nothing happened. The first day passed in scary silence, then the second day, then the third. No anonymous call, no rumor spreading around. The silence itself became more scary than any public threat. It hung over her like an invisible rope, forcing her to live with guilt and fear of being judged. One evening, after a private showing of Spellbound, they met again at the hotel. Outside, the wind howled loudly. Peck came in and hugged her with desperate longing. But this time Bergman didn't hug back. She pulled away. "Gregory," she whispered, her voice breaking, "we're living in a dream that isn't real. It's time to wake up." Peck froze. He held her hand tightly, holding on to the last bit of warmth. His eyes were lost like a child who had just lost his only safe place in a storm. "I love you," he said quietly, voice trembling. "And I always will, even when this dream is gone." Bergman smiled sadly. A smile that held everything. love, sadness, and determination. Then she turned and left the room before the tears could fall. Peck didn't follow her. He just stood there without moving, watching the door close. In the room still filled with her perfume, Peck went numb. He knew it was over. No promises, no goodbyes, only an empty space where their love had just broken in heartbreaking silence. From that day on, they never met alone again. On the movie set, they still saw each other every day, but everything had changed. Between them stood an invisible wall that Bergman herself had built. Cold, solid, and impossible to break through. Gregory Peck felt that wall more sharply than anyone. He tried to break through it with small, tender gestures. A long touch on her palm even after the director hadn't yet called cut. A faint smile remembering the rainy nights at the Bear Hotel, or sometimes simply staying behind after a scene, silently hoping she would turn back. But she never did. Once during a filming break, Peck found Bergman sitting alone in the dressing room. She was reading the script, the yellow light making her face look tired. He came closer quietly. "Can we talk privately for a moment?" Bergman looked up. Her eyes were still gentle, but something inside them had gone out. "Gregory, stop lying to yourself." Peck stepped back, nodded silently. That night, he drank alone in his hotel room, looking out at the foggy Los Angeles skyline. On the table was a bunch of white lilies he had planned to bring her. But this time he didn't. Yet every morning when he walked onto the movie set, his eyes automatically searched for her, and when he caught a glimpse of her, even for just a quick second, his heart still raced, just like the first day they met. Gregory Peck never got a second chance. Maybe it was that unfinished ending that made their love last forever. A love that never truly ended. It just dissolved into the black and white film reels, where their eyes still searched for each other, forever unable to touch. Many years after Ingrid Bergman died, her private letter was shown to the public, revealing a secret buried for decades. And the first person to read what it said was Gregory Peck. In the letter, she confessed the guilt and strong feelings she felt while filming their movie together. "We told ourselves it was only acting, that what we felt was part of the film, but that was a lie. When I looked into his eyes, I forgot everything else. That frightened me more than anything." Hollywood held its breath. Gregory Peck, by then in his 70s, sat in his small study in California. When he reached the line, "When I looked into his eyes, I forgot everything else. That frightened me more than anything," he stopped. His hands shook. Tears fell onto the page. That love was still alive, buried under the decades. In a 1978 interview, he finally admitted in front of the audience, "All I can say is that I truly loved her, and I think I should leave it at that. I was young. She was young. We were tied together for weeks of close and intense work." The entire studio fell silent. It was the first time he publicly said yes to the affair that Hollywood had thought was just a rumor for a long time. A love born while cameras and lights were on them, but filled with tragedy and something forbidden. After the interview, people who saw him said that Gregory Peck stayed behind for a long time, staring at Bergman's photograph on the wall. He whispered almost to himself, "If I could go back to that day, I'd still kiss her. But this time I wouldn't let go." Me. That was the only time Gregory Peck ever spoke about Ingrid Bergman with such a shaky voice, and the last time the world saw a legend crying, not for a movie role, but for a love that never had the chance to be complete. In the end, her gentle words in the letter, "I have never stopped being grateful for the kindness he showed me," sounded like a tender confession. But that letter and the final tears of Gregory Peck were only one chapter in the unfinished story called Ingrid Bergman. Because after closing that forbidden love, her life continued to be stormy with other men, those who loved her, betrayed her, worshipped her, and hurt her in their own ways. The later loves of Ingrid Bergman. Ingrid Bergman's private life, just like her career, was a journey made from passion, conflict, and a never-ending desire to live truthfully. Her first marriage was to Peter Lindström, a Swedish brain surgeon, who was calm, had strong principles, and was devoted to his work. He had once been her steady anchor, helping her stay grounded between the crazy whirlwind of Hollywood fame and personal life. They had a daughter together, Pia Lindström, born in 1938. But as Bergman's fame grew bigger and bigger, she was swept into a whirlwind of movie sets, interviews, and flights across continents, while Lindström stayed devoted to his hospital in Stockholm. Missed dinners, phone calls that weren't answered. Gradually, the distance between them became more than just an ocean. It was a drift of their souls. Their relationship faded in silence, and they officially got divorced in 1950. It was during that time that fate introduced Bergman to Roberto Rossellini, an Italian film director, a movie revolutionary, and the only man strong enough to make her break every rule of society. Their love came like a storm, unexpected, intense, and dangerous, because both of them were already married. When news spread that Bergman was pregnant with Rossellini's child, America erupted in anger. From the pure goddess loved by the world, she suddenly became the fallen woman that Hollywood chose to exile. Banned from Hollywood, Bergman moved to Europe with Rossellini, where they created groundbreaking works of Italian neorealism like Stromboli in 1950 and Journey to Italy in 1954. They had 3 children together, Roberto and twin daughters Isabella and Ingrid. But just as the flame had lit them on fire, it eventually burned itself out. Rossellini, a genius but controlling man, became suffocating. By 1957, their marriage had fallen apart, leaving behind films that were later called masterpieces of pain. A year later, Bergman met Lars Schmidt, a Swedish theater producer. He wasn't a stormy genius like Rossellini, and he wasn't the rational stability of Lindström either. But he had what neither of them did: calmness and understanding. They got married in 1958. Lars became her quiet companion, the man who stood backstage watching her shine, but never tried to steal the spotlight for himself. Their marriage wasn't dazzling or scandalous, only filled with gentle sharing and mutual respect, lasting almost 20 years. Though they divorced in 1975, their separation had no bitterness. They stayed in touch, continued to call each other best friends, and Schmidt was by her side during many of her later struggles with illness. 3 marriages, 3 different chapters, painted the portrait of a woman who refused to live halfway. From Lindström's safety to Rossellini's storm to Schmidt's peace, Ingrid Bergman passed through every form of love as if going through her movie roles. Passionate, real, and never the same twice. Yet, even after 3 marriages, 3 kinds of love, and countless legendary performances, Ingrid Bergman could not escape the final role that destiny had written for her, the role of a woman quietly preparing for her curtain call. Because when the stage lights got dim and the applause faded away, what remained was not the fame or the golden Oscar statues, but a whisper that had waited almost 40 years to be spoken. And all of it, love, regret, loneliness, and the final light in her eyes, came together on the fateful night of Ingrid Bergman's passing. That night, her death didn't just close a legend. It opened the last chapter of a love story's ending. Ingrid Bergman died in London after a long fight against cancer. Her death came on her 67th birthday, which she spent with her former husband Lars Schmidt. On the night of August 29, 1982, London lay under a gentle rain. In a small room on Cheyne Walk, the lights were still on. Ingrid Bergman took her final breath at midnight on her 67th birthday. Around her bed were the few dearest people left. In her life, her former husband Lars Schmidt, her daughter Isabella, and 2 lifelong friends. Just hours earlier, they had raised champagne glasses to celebrate her birthday. Ingrid smiled, weak but glowing, as if her coming departure was just another scene in the film of her life. On the small bedside table was a worn copy of The Little Prince, her favorite book, one she had carried on all her long journeys. The book was left open near the final pages, where it said, "What is essential is invisible to the eye." When the clock struck midnight, Ingrid's breathing quietly stopped. Lars Schmidt held her hand, the same hand that once shook while holding the Oscar statue, and had touched the men she had loved so passionately, both in life and on screen. They say that in her final moments, she opened her eyes, looked into the distance, and whispered something so softly that only Lars could hear. Years later, his voice still shook as he remembered it. She said, "I still think of him." No one asked who him was, but Lars knew. The love was not meant for him. It was her last message to Gregory Peck, the man Ingrid Bergman had longed for over almost 40 years, the one whose name she only dared to say out loud when life itself had reached its final act. And as the little Prince once wrote, "When you look at the sky, you'll see 1,000 stars laughing. One of them will be me." That night, a star named Ingrid Bergman fell over the skies of London, brilliant, silent, and forever unextinguished. The love between Ingrid Bergman and Gregory Peck was maybe never meant to have a happy ending. It arrived, like a storm, fierce, blazing, and quick, leaving behind two souls forever changed. But exactly because of that, it became one of the most romantic and tragic chapters in Hollywood's history. A place where true love was trapped beneath fake lights, and happiness only existed in stolen moments. Both Bergman and Peck went on with their lives, achieved fame, and had other loves. But deep down, they carried each other like a beautiful scar, where the memory was no longer pain, but proof of a love that once made them live most truthfully. Maybe what began as a quick crush on the set of Spellbound went beyond time itself. It was no longer a forbidden affair, but something sacred, a place where two souls had once found each other, only to prove that true love doesn't need to last forever. It only needs to be deep enough never to fade.